All right, let us begin. I'm wondering if anyone else here feels like we've been eating a lot. Yes, it feels to me like sitting down, and yeah, there's eating with the Franciscans, and there's just eating. Some of you took a while to find the snacks in the other room, so whoever brought them should be blessed, but not necessarily that many healthy snacks. So I am feeling full. I felt like that at breakfast this morning. Like, do I really need more food? And I think it's possible that many of us are starting to feel intellectually and spiritually full as well. So I think that's a good sign. I want you to know in the midst of that feeling full that my intention here is to talk just enough to tee up a couple of conversations for you. So hopefully if this goes well and I don't get lost, you will have generous amount of time to connect with one another. My hope is to tee up a conversation about friendship. And my basic assertion, as it was in the first retreat, is that spiritual friendship is an indispensable gift in navigating through the various seasons of change in our lives. Friendship, in my experience, is both a grace and a practice. So it's a grace. It's like you cannot design friendships to happen. They come to us in the most surprising ways sometimes, and that's what makes them incredibly delightful, is that they come out of nowhere. And for those of you who were at the last retreat, Andrew said, aren't you going to put your picture up of your friends? So I have a gathering of friends that I've known since I was 18. We meet together every year. We've made a covenant to be lifelong friends together, to walk together. And I said, at the last retreat that I wouldn't have chosen a one of them when I met them. I would not have predicted that any of them would be the people in whom there would form a deep love and affection in my heart. Some of them were terribly offensive people to me. Like I thought, I would like to room with someone else. I would like to vacation with someone else. Our personalities are different. Our styles are different. The way in which we go through conflict is different. And all of those differences are part of what make them valuable friends in my life. But friendship is a grace then. It comes to us like manna. It comes to us as a gift of God's kindness to us. And we need to make space for the reality that most often God knows what it is we need for our long-term journey far better than we know what we need. So friendship comes to us as an expression of God's generosity and kindness to us. It is a grace and it is a practice. It is something that we don't ever achieve. It's something that we put into practice that's always evolving and changing and nurturing. We're changing, they're changing, the friendship is changing, the nurture of the friendship is changing. It is its own living thing, and we have to pay attention to those dynamics if we want life-giving friendships, and especially if we want spiritual friendships. In my young adulthood, one of my jobs was as a tennis instructor. And I would always have people, frustrated that they're not improving. And my question was always, tennis lessons, once a week for 45 minutes, right? It's like, I'm frustrated, I'm not getting better, I'm not getting any better at all. Do I not have any talent for this? My only question, it's like, what is your practice routine? It's like, well, I faithfully come to this lesson once a week. I thought, you are right on track for not getting any better at all. You're just like sustaining a level of frustration in your life, We had someone teach a yoga class at our church, so we're that kind of church that feels okay about such things. I know not everyone does. But, I thought I'm gonna go to this yoga class because I have notoriously stiff muscles. I don't have very much muscle, but what I have is stiff. And I just thought, after weeks and weeks of going to this yoga class, I am not getting any more flexible at all. And I was so frustrated. And it's like, the design of my body just not going to be that way? And this woman who was teaching our yoga class said, well, what else are you doing between Saturdays? How often are you practicing these poses? And I come faithfully, each Saturday morning. She's like, well, you are on track for not improving at all. So friendship is a practice. And again, one of the things we're saying is it's an indispensable practice for journeying through the seasons of our transformation and the seasons of our vocational change. It has been such an incredible honor to be with you all as you narrate your experience of what it is that God is doing in your life. And I'm very aware as I speak with you in various spaces, whether longer conversations or shorter conversations, that it's an incredibly vulnerable space. To have deep desire that Andrew was talking about. It's like, well, that seems like a natural thing, but it's a vulnerable thing to come in contact with our deepest desire. It is a vulnerable thing to have a longing and then to have a door presented to us and the challenge of what it will cost us to go through that door. That's a profoundly vulnerable thing. As some of us have transitions we're going through that we did not choose or that we would not have desired. Some of those transitions are external. They have to do with vocational roles. Some of those transitions and changes are internal. They have to do with the kind of person, the kind of disciple that we are becoming. And we can't always see our way through those things. In fact, the most profound transitions are the ones in which we feel like we're in the dark. That's why, John of the Cross, I talk about the dark night of the soul. There's something that God is doing that we cannot find our way through. So it has been an extraordinary and beautiful thing to converse with you about your lives and about what's before you. It's been a great thing as a leadership team to pray for you and to ponder the great possibilities of your life, what impact you might have, what way you might uniquely reflect the face of Jesus in the hurting world around us. So I totally feel like this is like sacred ground, not just because the beach is out there, although that helps, but sacred ground because your lives are so incredibly interesting. Our transitions are complex. Our transitions are quite often filled with kinds of tests for us to go through, refining for us to go through. And once again, I really do believe it is my life experience that these kinds of transitions are best traveled through in the company of friends. The gifts of wise spiritual friends are many, and we could name a bunch of them. Certainly companionship. If you're going through a season where I don't know where I'm going, it's nice to know that there are people walking alongside us. It's nice to have the diversion of laughter in the midst of things that feel intense and painful. The gift of friends help to form us. It takes somebody who genuinely loves us to say the hard things about us, and none of us transform into the face of Christ without loving friends who speak the truth in love. It takes friends to inspire us and to speak wisdom towards us. And then, the issues of discernment. The issues of discernment. In my group of friends, my experience at this season of our life is that most of the issues of discernment, we could have Andrew come lead numerous retreats from us, but they're hard issues. It's like far easier on the screen, isn't it, Andrew? Like in the midst of the fog of discernment, there are challenging things. I have a friend in our group who's been devoted to one ministry organization for his entire ministry career. He's valued, he's been promoted, and yet, he doesn't necessarily feel like his vision and values and what he wants to accomplish is being received by the organization. So what does one do in that circumstance? How does one see what is best? Is that a moment in which you should be patient and persevering and long-suffering and lay your life down for the organization? Or is it a moment in which you say, this does not fit who I am in this season of my life? Or for me, for those of you who are Enneagram type folks, I'm Enneagram type 6. That's, the loyalist person who's going to stick it out. That is shown in my resume, so it's like, well, I worked for one ministry organization for 15 years, InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, doing campus ministry with college students. And then for the last 23 years, I've worked for this one church. And that's been delightful to me. I have loved every moment of it. But when is sticking with it love, self-sacrifice? When is it the wisdom of Eugene Peterson, who says it's a good thing to stay? Or when is it really not the thing to do anymore? When has it become old? When is it tired? Or when is it potentially even cowardice to stay? That sort of conversation takes people who know who you are, who can see into the patterns of your life, who can see into the deep things of your heart. And sometimes it's not the case, in my experience, that people have a prophetic word or they know exactly the thing you ought to do. It's just that in the midst of what is not completely clear, there is someone that was there to have borne witness to the fact that God seemed to be leading in this way, so that in the difficult time, in the time of challenge, there's someone still there to say, we were with you when you decided. That was a sound decision. That was a good decision. And you should stay in this season. So if we are going to progress in Christ-likeness, if we're going to live in ministry with a heart of warmth that's increasingly warm for Jesus, and a heart that is increasingly clear about how it is we've been designed and what it is we have been given for, I think the gift of friends are indispensable. David Benner, who Art quoted yesterday when we were out on the point, contends that we undervalue friendship. We especially undervalue friendship in the Western world, and we particularly undervalue friendship in the Western male world. So it's like, in my experience, I think we should say, I don't actually know anyone that says, I don't care about friends. Friends are a low priority in my life. That's not important to me. It's just that our way of living, our way of being doesn't prize friendship. It feels to us often like the thing that would be nice to have in the midst of other things that are demanding in our lives. So I would like to briefly revisit the scripture, the text that we've been in so often in these couple of days, John chapter 15. I'll just paraphrase here. But in John 15:9, Jesus says to his disciples, as the Father loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. Abide in my love. Those of us who are not abstract Johnine type people, those of us who are concrete thinkers might ask, how does one abide in an invisible Holy Spirit? How does one abide in Christ? Jesus helps us there. He says, well, just keep my commandments. Keep my commandments and you will abide. That's what I am doing, says Jesus. Well, there's a lot of commandments. Which of these commandments should we be obeying? Jesus helps us there as well. He says, the commandment that he is giving to his disciples is to love one another and to lay down our lives for the sake of friendship. And if we do, says Jesus, his joy will be in us, and our joy will be lasting and full. So if you want to abide in Christ, says Christ himself, give your life away for the sake of friends. Now, people have known this idea outside of the Christian faith for centuries. The ancient philosophers viewed friendship as the crown of life. And there's all kinds of quotes. If you just look it up, it's like people throughout antiquity have spoken in soaring language about the value of friendship in ways that we kind of like do a throwaway thing in the United States anyways. Maybe it's different in Australia. Is it? The mates, there's at least a word for such thing. Ancient philosophers viewed friendship as the crown of life, the fulfillment of all that is distinctly human. The French novelist Marcel Proust, he's not a Christian soul to my knowledge, he said, friendships or friends are the gardeners who make our souls blossom. In the behavioral sciences, there's a quote in your notes from a man named George Valiant. The Harvard Grant study is I think the longest longitudinal study about happiness. This is research crossing ethnicities and socioeconomic statuses. I'll just read these quotes now in your notes. George Valiant said, close relationships, the data indicates, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. The study found strong relationships to be far and away the strongest predictor of life satisfaction and better predictors of long and happy lives than social class, wealth, fame, IQ, or even genes. That finding proved true across the board among both Harvard men and inner city participants. And strong relationships are not only correlated with happiness, but with physical health, longevity, and financial success too. Happiness is love, full stop. That sounds kind of touchy-feely for a PhD to me, but I think we could trust his words. This is research-based exhortation to us. Those of us who are involved in Christian leadership in the Western world especially are drawn away from this as something that is too soft to value. And we do it to our own demise, according to the secular researchers. Elred of Rivaux, the French Cistercian monk in the 12th century, said these beautiful words. He said, no medicine is more valuable, none more efficacious, none better suited to the cure of all our temporal ills than a friend to whom we may turn for consolation in times of trouble, and with whom we may share our happiness in time of joy. A faithful friend is the medicine of life and the grace of immortality. Now, that's really soaring language, isn't it? Friendship is the medicine of life. It is how God heals our souls and forms us into the eternal beings that Dallas Willard was always talking about. Antony the Great, going further back, the 4th century Egyptian monk said, our life and death is with our neighbor. So, let us be people who cherish friendship, whose eyes and hearts are open to the grace of friendship as it comes to us, and who practice friendship, who are observant about friendship, who are growing more skillful in the art of friendship. All right, I said I wouldn't talk for too long, so let's have one round of conversation. I want to put you in groups of 2 or 3, and I just want you to brainstorm together for a moment friendships that seem cool to you, friendships that are inspiring or generative or remarkable to you. They could be friendships that you see in the Bible. They could be friendships from literature, fiction literature, things that are stirring to you. Or it could be friendships from history or from your own personal life, things you've seen or experienced. Okay? Turn in groups of 2 or 3. Number 1, make a list of those friendships. Who are they? Tell one another about them. And the second question is, of those friendships, which of them are most moving to you and why? Which of them are moving, meaningful to you, and why? So we'll check in about 5 minutes, and we'll talk about it. There will be one more round of conversation after this, but I would be interested in some larger group processing to just hear what's in the room. Friendships are all different. They're like, jewels that sparkle in different ways. So what are the friendships, if a few of us would share, what friendships, either from the Bible or from literature or from history, what friendships have been remarkable to you, and why are they inspiring to you? Be not shy.
I thought about Donald Faison and Zach Braff, and also Michael Shea and Colin Jost.
And we say not everyone, obviously laughter, many people know, but not everyone knows, so go ahead and say.
SNL guys, one is African American, one's white, they write jokes for each other, and it's super awesome. But the reason for both of those is that both of those, not only are they interracial friendships, but they're also, there's just genuine delight that seems to happen when they're around each other, and so that's what's
Yeah. So in these days, especially, the possibility of an interracial friendship where there's genuine delight and the capacity to interact over real things there. That's awesome. Others? Yeah.
I thought of, from Braveheart, William Wallace and Stephen and Hamish, and those guys just, like, if he's going to die, we're going with him.
Yeah.
And then thought about, spent time thinking about Thomas and Jesus, and Thomas saying a very similar thing. And so much time I've spent thinking of Thomas as sort of Eeyore, or the doubter.
Yeah.
And then somehow the Braveheart thing making me see his statement, like, well, if he's going to Jerusalem, we might as well go with him.
Yeah.
As a much more heroic.
Yeah.
And so just a friend that'll go with you into whatever's coming.
Yeah. So the possibility that people would be spurred into courage, the courage to lay down life where that might not have been possible otherwise.
Yeah.
And you should get an extra award for combining Braveheart and Winnie the Pooh in the same sharing. So thank you for that. That's very good. All right.
We were talking around David and Jonathan, which is a popular, friendship.
Yeah.
But as we were sitting with that, and after we were talking, I was reminded, he did not go after Saul because he's God's anointed.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but think in the backdrop, he's also Jonathan's dad. And even the way he deals with Mephibosheth,
Yeah.
he's a living heir. You don't keep an heir around. He does. He brings him to his table. I've thought about how friendship extends sometimes even beyond the one you love, but to the one that they love.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, just in that Jonathan-David dynamic, and how David that played out even after Jonathan.
That's beautiful. Yeah, Len.
The great Frodo and Sam quote, right, where Frodo says,
Here, you're facing this way, so
Frodo
you have to
says,
speak into the microphone.
I'm going alone, Sam. And then Sam says, of course you are, and I'm coming with you.
That's awesome. Is there anyone that needs to make a confession that you actually haven't followed Lord of the Rings that much? Anyone do that? Yeah, there's one. I have not read it.
What?
I know I've quoted it in sermons and I've not read it. So, that's like wrong. Boo. Boo. But now because of Len's quote, I am going to read the entire 4,000 pages of the thing. Yeah. So the loyal friend, it's beautiful. A couple others?
The first one that came to mind for me was, kind of in the theme of unlikely friends, was Antonin Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I had that on my list, yes.
And I think I've had some experiences in life of finding friends with whom and for whom ideologically we are polar ends
Yes.
of the spectrum, and yet so much of our society, our relationships and our communities and our experiences are sort of dictated by our preferences and affinities and the things that we share in common, what ideological persuasions we are, and all the things. But the gift of having a friend with whom and for whom you delight in their humanity and are curious about the way in which they see the world, which is very different from your own, but you can appreciate how intentionally and with what love they enter into spaces and places of life. Like that for me was such a gift to have
Yeah.
that kind of friendship.
Yeah. And almost completely extinct in our world.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, I mean, I've read those stories as well, so that is on my list, and it's like, this is a narrative of genuine affection, of not just willingness to hear out the other person, but appreciation for what it is they're bringing, a willingness to let that idea sharpen me, even if I don't share that idea. And then they were like going to shows together, appreciation. So very human and hopeful. Others? Yeah, Mary.
I have an example, but like a true friend for me is someone with no pretense. I don't come with it, they don't either.
Yeah.
And that their presence is a balm to my soul.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anyone else have one they wanted to put out? I mean, I think we should go ahead and name the Bible ones, Mary and Elizabeth. It's like a hard calling, an honoring calling, but a near impossible calling, an unimaginably difficult calling. And, you've all been in the Bible studies where you can imagine what that might have been like and the social resistance to the journey Mary would have to be on, and the encouragement and presence of a wise friend who's on a similar spiritual journey to make all the difference in the world. Paul and Barnabas the same, I mean, Paul, who would want to be friends with Paul? He sounded like a very difficult person, and Paul was a difficult person for Barnabas along the way, and but Barnabas' capacity to see the grace of God in another and to sponsor another person into influence and leadership, someone with gifts that would be greater, an influence that would be broader, and to walk with them anyways and open doors for them. So much of what we have in salvation history, in the story of redemption, simply would not have been possible without the gift of loving friends. The gift of loving friends. And maybe if it's not too much of a cheap shot, we could say in contemporary American culture, like the TV show Friends, which ran for I don't know how many seasons. That's like, this is what captures the imagination of popular culture. Are there any friends in that show? Is there one friendship in the show called Friends that you would think, ooh, that's admirable. Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's just, our world is a crazy place. And to the extent that we attune our affections and our sensibilities to the world that's around us, we will throw our lives away and our vocations along with it. So do not do that. So the exhortation is to prize spiritual friendship and to prioritize them in the routines of our lives. You all are skilled, gifted pastoral people, so there's nothing I could say about the sort of keys or ingredients in friendship that would be all that interesting or surprising to you. But let me name two just for the sake of giving us common language for things, and then we'll move on to the opportunity to practice it together. David Benner, in his book on sacred companionship, names a list of qualities of spiritual friends. Amongst them, I think, are two prominent ones. I would like break from evangelical preaching and not do three. Just two prominent ingredients that I think are good for us to pay attention to. The key ingredients of presence and dialogue. The capacity to be present, fully present, and the capacity to dialogue. On the issue of presence, maybe it would help for you to think about someone in your life who feels like when you're with them, they are present to you. What are the qualities of their life that make for their presence? I mean, in one sense, everyone's physically present, but we feel the difference between someone who is all there and someone who's not. My brother is sort of like an ADHD type person. He's a pastor, church planner, by the way. But every once in a while I call him and we're talking on the phone and I feel like he's responding to me a little more slowly than normal. And then I'll hear like clicking in the background, the clicking of the keyboard, and it's like, I do not feel like you are, I do not feel like you are with me here, He's got a million things going on. Church planners are busy people. I don't know how a church planner is supposed to be present to an individual person when you have to do, negotiate leases and set up chairs and do all these things and find someone to lead worship. But, it's hard in a life where we have many things to do to be present. I've shared with some of you that my wife has us on camping trips these days. And I was kicking and screaming against this. After our kids graduated from high school, I tried to sell our camping gear, and she brought it all back in. And she said, I thought we would like start a new chapter of our lives, and I thought the chapter of our lives would involve bed and breakfast places, cappuccinos, and all that sort of stuff. A couple of weeks ago, we went on this road trip to New Mexico. You were camping at White Sands National Park. That's like an 18-mile drive from San Jose. So 2 9-mile drives, and I'm thinking like, I do not really want to do this. My friends at the river, the church that I pastor, 3 couples are going to Hawaii, and I thought, the whole time we're driving, I'm thinking, I would be in Hawaii by now. But one of the reasons why I submit to my wife's desire in this is that our lives are so separate. If you're like a dual income people, it's like, we've done ministry together in the past, but in this long season of our life, she's a public school teacher and I'm working at the church. And, my life's intensive and her life is intensive. And when she's talking about the dynamics of the school system, I can start to glaze over, because it's like, I don't know what these titles are, how this structure works, who these people are. There's 3 different women named Lisa. I need you to write an org chart up here. But it can drift into the space where, of course, I care about how things are going for her, but there are times where it kind of feels like I don't care. I don't know what you're talking about. And she doesn't really know what I'm talking about either, even though it's the church that she attends. But I'm talking about things that are just sort of outside of the world of things that she is fluent in. So, putting our lives together on vacation and being in the car for 9 hours was really a very good ascesis, a good discipline, a good space to be in to say, what common conversation can we have? What book can we read together? What podcast could we listen together and have a conversation about? Presence has to be cultivated. I think there are some people who are probably naturally more better at it than others, but I think for all of us, we live in a world of which our attention is profoundly fractured. There's way too much information out there, and if we try to master everything that we feel like we need to master in order to do our jobs well, our minds will most naturally be in a million different places when we're in front of an individual person, and we will not find ourselves with capacity to be present in the way that a loving friend needs to be present. And it's for that reason that I'm so incredibly impressed with the life of Jesus. I love the story in Mark chapter 5, where the woman with the flow of blood, you remember Jesus is on his way. He's got a very urgent task to do. He's going to heal a man whose daughter is dying. There's a whole crowd of people around pressing in on them. It's a very high energy, high adrenaline sort of situation, right? And we see Jesus in the midst of the crowd with the capacity to pay attention to the one individual. The one individual who's not very important in that world. The one individual who, by many measures, could wait, The one individual who's unclean in the room and who, in their worldview anyways, wasn't really deserving of attention. Jesus had the capacity in the crowd to see the one, and he had the capacity in the rush, in the pressure, in the midst of the goal to meet or the budget that needs to get done. Jesus had the capacity to slow down and to be patient, not merely to listen to the whole story, but to ask for the whole story, to want to hear the whole thing. Presence is a gift and a practice. We have to practice being present with others. And then David Benner says dialogue, the capacity to dialogue. Benner calls dialogue a means of grace, a mediation of the presence of God. The capacity not to rush in and solve problems, which sounds like it would be a good thing to do, except that it's sort of objectifying to another person to be the solution, but to facilitate the I-thou encounter, to see the thou in this interaction. My experience last spring on the Camino de Santiago, our 160-mile walk is just a portion of it from Portugal into Spain, was a really excellent sort of parable and experience in these experiences of presence and dialogue. It's like, I'm going to do this very exciting thing. I'm going to go on this adventure. And I just realized in the experience how much inner baggage I carry. That it's going to sleep at night and I'm dreaming about work things, not in a positive way, dreaming about things people said, the accumulation of expectations that people foist upon me. That takes time to unburden ourselves of that baggage. It takes time. It's why we need stillness, silence, solitude. Get away and be by the ocean. And dialogue, then, can only arise in the midst of that in a skillful kind of way. It was interesting on the Camino, there's all kind of spiritual but not religious people on the Camino. Not everyone. Some people are just there on a vacation type thing, and they're right down, all kind of people doing things. But there are interesting spiritual seeking souls on that long journey. Probably more people journaling at the albergue, the hostel there, probably more people sitting up at night journaling there than on the church retreat that I go to. And I met this young Polish woman, at one of the hostels and then encountered her again on one of the walks. She's not a Christian identifying person, though, as a European, somewhere in the background. And on the walk on the Camino, we found one another, and I still remember she asked me the question, what is coming up for you as you walk? And I thought, no one at church ever asks me that. People ask me how I am, and then you say fine, and then you go on and do other things. But it seemed to me like such an astute, skillful question that fit in this category of dialogue. And she was able to answer that question as well. That I was able to respond to her, and she could narrate what it was that was coming up for her, and the sense that there was probably more there than she could unpack before she got to Santiago, that she would need more time for that. The beauty, though, of dialogue, it's a skill It's a skill that we practice. Well, I'm going to send you into some time with one another to be present to one another and to practice the art of dialogue in some way. Before I do, I just want to ask you the question: where are you in your journey of forming meaningful spiritual friendship? Where are you? And what would it mean for you to do something doable and sustainable that would nurture a pattern of deepening friendships? So it's possible that you're in an awesome space, and that there are really great people in your lives. And maybe all there is to do to nurture that is to give them a call, and to say thank you, and to let them know how much they mean to you. We were talking up here about, just what it does when somebody expresses how much a friendship means. That it's like water on the plant. It's like making the fruit sweeter. Or maybe things have changed for you. There are people in your life who have been friends. I doubt there's anyone here who doesn't have any friends, but life is changing, and some of you have moved locations. What is changing? What are you needing? And what gift do you have to bring? The tool that I have to give to you is called the compass. It was developed by a professor at Loyola Marymount University, which is just a handful of miles from here. He's a retired professor and a spiritual director. You will receive a handout in a moment with some questions, but it is a compass, and the idea of the compass is the categories are like true north is like our guiding light, our stabilizing force, our enduring purpose. So it just has to do with the questions of, in this season of my life or in the journey of my life, are there images of God or key scriptures that God has spoken to me through that I'm supposed to hold on to and remember? So that true north, south, Wilkie Au describes as the sunny exposure that it injects new energy, imagination, and play, to which all our Enneagram 7-ish friends say amen. But that's just the question of, where our creativity is being called forth. What are the longings of our heart, where we maybe have experienced some sense of flow, what activities we find genuinely nurturing, what brings us in these days a sense of delight and laughter, the southern exposure. West, not surprisingly, is the sunset marking the ending of the day. So looking west in Wilkie Au's view is just a question of endings in our life. Things don't last forever. In the industrial world where we have electric lights, it just feels like we just keep going. But that's not what life is like. Seasons change, whether you live in California or not. Like seasons change, things come to an end. And life goes better when we can recognize those things. Jobs can come to an end. Loyal commitments to organizations can come to an end. Relationships can come to an end. Relational investments sometimes need to be pruned. Certain practices maybe need to come to an end for us. Is there anything in your life that is in kind of a sunset experience? And then finally, east marks the rising of the sun, the beginning of a new day. So that's just a question of what is new? What is coming into view? The green flash. What What new thing is God bringing into your life, even if it's not fully in view yet? Are there new passions, new people, new places of focus in the same job that you do have, new conversations, things with old friends that you've never had the courage to talk about before? What would it mean to begin a conversation in that space? So it's 11:45 now. The invitation will be, Pam's going to pass out this that I was just reading from. The invitation will be just to pair up with someone, take a walk. You can read through the questions on this document. You don't have to do the whole thing together. There's, like Andrew said, it's probably a whole retreat thing. But is there one category that feels like, oh, there's something here that I could share in a bearing of my soul kind of way, and the other friend could walk and be present and receive the grace that God is pouring out in that sharing?